Hey there, everyone, and welcome back to the Elder Scrolls of Guild and Coin. Doing something a little bit different today. Um, Figured I would also kind of highlight some little side quests that our players are going through. These side quests don't necessarily have, they don't count toward progression toward, like, the next level. They're not giant milestones like the group would face together. Instead, these are things that the group is up to either while traveling or kind of like little side quests that they're doing in their own time. So, yeah, and each player kind of has an interesting concept behind their character that they've been wanting to kind of express in the game, and this is another way in which they'd be able to do that. So today we're starting off joined by my wonderful friend Brenna,
Hi.
who is playing as her character Amrit.
And who is not sleep deprived, which is important.
Yeah, it helps. um, so, alrighty. So the party has been traveling for a few days. You guys have left the unfinished Dolmen site. Um, you've received the mysterious spell book from Julinak.
So excited.
And you guys have been traveling for a few days, headed northeast toward Orsinium. And for the most part, it's a fairly uneventful journey thus far. The weather has been cold and brisk, but otherwise fairly mild, especially for this region. Um, and as you've traveled, like, it's gone from being heavily forested, like tall pines in the southwestern area of Orsinium, and those pines are starting to thin out and become more like wide tundra type plains. Um, you can see hills rolling off into the distance. Toward the north, there are absolutely massive snow-capped mountains. Um,
So
on the
the mountains here are hilarious.
eh, eh. um, and off in the distance, you can also see ruins throughout the region. Even massive columns of what you think might have once been an aqueduct. Um,
I love me some good ruins.
yeah, you know from your own studies that a lot of these ruins are what's left of the ancient empires of Orsinium. You'd also know from your readings, because you read everything. Um, uh, Orsinium has been built from the ground up, invaded, razed to the ground, built from the ground up, invaded, razed, and over and over and over again. In part, a lot of scholars theorize that this is because of the origin of the orc race, of the Orsimer race, being kind of a product of the creation of Malakath, the spurned Daedric prince. So, of course, the history of the orcs kind of reflects that in a way. And eventually it gets to the point where it's time to settle down for the night. Everybody else kind of settles down in their own way. Like Zira finds her own spot to sit down, care for her weapons a bit before she goes to sleep because she's got the second watch. You see a couple of other people, they go about their own business, tending to the camp, making sure that Ashanti isn't the one cooking.
Smart.
Yeah. And then eventually everybody's eaten, settled down, and gone to sleep. For the most part, your shift doesn't seem to have anything abnormal go on. However, I would like you to make a perception check.
One perception check coming right up. Something I am not that great at. Oh, that was cocked. Okay. That would be, a whopping 7.
Ooh, excellent.
I know, I'm so good at perception.
Yeah, nothing really seems to be out of the ordinary. The stars,
out of the ordinary.
yeah, the night is really beautiful. You can see all of the stars up in the sky. Both of the moons are full tonight. And there's no abnormal sound in the night. Every now and then you might hear the trumpeting of a mammoth off in the distance, or the call of some night birds. But it's quiet. It's peaceful. And toward the end of your shift, that bit of weariness, that exhaustion from having traveled so much, begins to set into your bones a bit. And it comes time to change shifts, and so you wake up Zira and have her take over watch. And you settle in for the night. You lay down, and from where you lay, you can easily see your pack, with the black book kind of poking out through the opening.
I adjust that right away.
It's just in such a way where you're able to see that it's there and it's safe.
Okay, that's good.
Yeah, I don't think Amrit would be careless enough to leave it out in the open.
Mm-hmm.
And you're kind of laying there, keeping an eye on that book before you fall asleep. And the rest of the world begins to kind of gradually go out of focus. Only the book remains in focus. And the world slowly begins to fade away, until all you see in front of you is the book, even without the pack, without the other stuff around you. It's just you and the book. This time, however, it doesn't seem to be calling you to read it like it has in the past. When you first recovered this book, it had definitely attempted to get you to read it, but you'd been able to resist it for all this time. But now you're you look around and you find that that the trees in the area have been replaced by stacks upon shelves of books. The sky has kind of turned this sickly greenish color. And the area around you is lit only by these lanterns with green flame, kind of lighting what you realize is a hallway that you're standing in the middle of, with this book in front of you. Every so often, a breeze passes through this hallway, and loose sheets of paper kind of swirl and billow about you, and you begin to realize that you're not merely dreaming this. You must actually be here, because this is far too vivid for it to be any sort of dream. If you'd like, you can make an Arcana or Religion check to try to figure out where you're at.
I would love to.
And I'd go ahead and give you advantage.
Okay. Let's see, Arcana's my shtick, so I'm going to do that. Okay, that would be a 22.
A 22? And on which check? Sorry, I had missed that.
Oh, Arcana.
Arcana? Your studies of Oblivion and the planes has definitely led you to kind of learn more about all of the Daedric princes and the realms of Oblivion that they preside over. but only one has ever really stuck out to you as being one of interest,
Mm-hmm.
and that is the realm of Apocrypha. Um, the endless library of forbidden knowledge hoarded by the Daedric prince Hermaeus Mora. Um, and you realize that you're standing in the middle of that library. The knowledge of magic and history and existence itself is right there at your fingertips, just stretching off into infinity. Um, and some of these books are kind of stacked on one another, others are on shelves. Some books are even kept in cases that are wrought of a twisted and unrecognizable metal. Um, Here and there down the hallway, it looks like there are pools of inky black water. Um, and yeah, you're in this library holding this book that you've been carrying with you at this point for years. Um, so what would you like to do?
Well, uh, I think I'm getting a little itchy fingered. Want to touch all these books,
Mm-hmm.
but I don't know if that's the best idea.
Mm-hmm.
So I think I will just hold on to my book
Mm-hmm.
and kind of wander, see if I can spot anything I recognize or
Okay.
any books that I can think maybe are safe to read. I don't know if they're all labeled or not, but
Some of them
want to look
ta-
around.
Some of them have titles, some of them don't. The bindings are different on each one. You're not sure if there's any logical organization to the way that all of these books are arranged. Um, and I'd like you to go ahead and make another perception check for me.
Beautiful, beautiful perception check. It's going to be great. Oh, I actually rolled pretty well. 13.
Um, you're walking, and behind you, you hear a large rustling, almost like a bunch of sheaves of paper kind of sliding over and spilling. And when you turn around, you watch as the hallway behind you is actually shifting and moving. And you realize that this is more than just an infinite library. It's an infinite and self-changing library. A labyrinth that is never the same for very long. Um, and from what you gather, even now, you're likely lost. Um, and after a while of wandering, you finally sit down at a little desk. It's just a simple reading desk with an inkwell and quill. There's some loose sheets of paper, kind of paper and parchment, just scattered on it. Some of them have weird writings that you don't recognize scribbled on them. Others are blank. Um, but you kind of just sit down to take a quick breath and try to figure out what your next course of action is going to be now that you are hopelessly lost in a maze of forbidden knowledge.
Well, I'm probably dreaming. Uh, there's no point in making any sort of map. I think I might just want to maybe take another look at all these books. Kind of, it's just like Dream Library, and I want to check it out.
um, you're pretty certain that it's not a dream, actually. Everything's just too tangible. It's too detailed for it to be a dream. Um, and especially for a high elf like you, like high elves remember things in incredible detail, and even their dreams don't often have this level of detail like reality would. Um, but you walk and you kind of peer at some of these books. Some are written in strange languages that you can't possibly comprehend. Um, Others are shaped in weird ways, like here and there you find a book in the shape of a circle, or you find this weird sphere with writings all over the outside.
Do I know what those are?
Not really. If you'd like, you can go ahead and make a history check or even an investigation check.
History check is good. I'm good at history. I'm a nerd. Let's see.
Insight would also work for this one.
All right. History of 22.
From all of your reading of history, you're staring at these things, and they don't match anything that anyone has ever recorded. Not the Sijic Order, not the Mages Guild. Um, it's far older than anything the Aliens would have, and it's certainly not Akaviri, because you would recognize the telltale signs of Akaviri writing. You're not sure if it's from some far off land, but after a while of looking at it, you realize that these items are impossibly ancient. Um, and it's kind of with a little bit of shock that you realize it's quite possible that these are pieces of knowledge from previous kulpas. A kulpa being a cycle of existence that this universe takes. The last kulpa ended, and then it began again with the creation of Nirn and the arrival of the divines and the creation of the Daedra and so on and so forth. For something to exist from a previous Kulpa is like finding something that existed in a previous universe. And for a brief moment, you're kind of in awe at how old these things are, and your mind's racing, that curiosity kind of building up in you. But before you can begin to pursue it, from within from around you throughout these antediluvian halls, this black mass begins to form in front of you. And the black book that you're holding, it kind of escapes your grasp and begins floating in front of you, between you and this black mass that's forming. And from the center of this black mass opens a massive eye.
Holy shit.
And all of these tentacles begin to form out of the black mass, and other eyes are opening and closing, forming and dissolving right in front of you. And as it looks over you, almost like this wave of power seems to wash over you. And as you stare at it, and it stares back, you begin to have a dawning realization. Right in front of you is no simple Daedra, no simple watcher or anything like that. Right in front of you is the Daedric Prince of Knowledge himself, Hermaeus Mora.
I probably come to that realization for his name in awe. Like, holy crap, I am not only meeting Santa, I am meeting everyone I would ever want to meet ever.
This is an interesting surprise. What brings you to my realm, mortal?
I do not know. I assume the book.
He kind of looks briefly at the book, and then looks back at you. My black books have been pursued by hundreds like yourself throughout the centuries. Many are drawn to knowledge which they cannot possibly retain. What makes you so different from those other scholars? How have you resisted the call of knowledge unknown?
I know full well that there is knowledge in the world, however much we may want to know it, that we ought not to never know.
Um,
Wait, that was a weird sentence. We ought to never know. There we go.
his gaze is inscrutable. It's and this is also something that comes as no surprise to you. One can never truly know what goes on in the mind of a Daedric prince.
Hmm.
And a tendril reaches out and kind of wraps around the book and peers at it. He says, I have been watching you for a long time. It is your story that I am interested in adding to my library. He passes the book back over to you, and with one of those tentacles opens it, and you find that the inside of the book is actually blank. Not a single mark on the pages. Um, and this does kind of come as a surprise to you because the book had in the past tried to call you to read it, um, but you'd resisted the temptation so much that you'd never even opened it.
Hmm.
Um, and you very well could have been carrying this book with you for years without a single word having been on that parchment.
Probably the farthest I've gotten is studying the outside. So
Yeah.
I know like every nick and groove and every symbol on the outside, but never opened it.
Mm. Like, you have come into the company of others. Others whom the other Daedric princes have drawn an interest. They, too, are beings unusual to your realm. He produces this quill from the air and begins to kind of scribble inside the book. You're not able to see what he's writing. It's almost as if like his handwriting, despite it being right there in plain view for you, it's almost like the handwriting of Hermaeus Mora is impossible for your mind to wrap around. And he says, I have brought you here to my realm of Apocrypha. You are a servant to my whims. Willing or unwilling, you have brought more knowledge to my halls. Um, and then he passes you the quill. He says, you, as my servant, will have a task that I will reward greatly, should you be willing to accept.
What is this task?
Your stories are as yet unwritten. Your futures are shrouded from my knowledge. Histories and centuries of the past and future. The knowledge of fate is my realm. But your fates are not within my library. They elude me, and I seek to restore this missing spot here in Apocrypha.
That must be infuriating.
Um, the lights in the area dim a little bit, and more tendrils kind of seem to appear from among the books. It says, all knowledge returns to me. Hermaeus Mora, Prince of knowledge and reader of fate. He uh, points toward the book. He says, You, my mortal servant, will fill in this book. I want your story. I want the story of your companions. He looks expectantly at you, kind of watching as the wheels in your brain turn.
I only need keep record of our journey.
More than just your journey. I need to know about each of you personally. Each page in my black book is to be filled. One page for each member of your group. He says, but for the knowledge to be true, for the knowledge to be pure, I need not ink to be the instrument of your writing, but living blood.
The blood of the people I'm writing about, or just any blood?
An inquisitive mind makes for one which scrounges knowledge. I need the living blood of the subjects of which you write. In each page, you will write using the living blood drawn from their waking souls in order to gain the truth of their stories.
That will be difficult.
How it is done is of no concern to mine. One way or another, your stories will return to Apocrypha. However, there is a reward for accomplishing this task. He gestures over to the walls of books, and he says, for each page you fill, you will receive a page of forbidden knowledge of your choice. Knowledge for your mind only. Knowledge unknown to the rest of Tamriel.
Okay, so let me make sure I'm getting this perfectly clear. All I need to do, dip this quill in blood of the people I am writing about, write it on the pages of this book in the blood, and then I'm good. And I need histories, I need our travels together, I need wherever we go.
That is the task I set before you, mortal. This black book, empty though it may be, will soon be full of the knowledge of your party, of their influence from the Daedra, and of the foes that they defeat.
I accept, however, there is one problem. We have lost a member of our party, and I have no way to get their living blood to tell their story, or even how to get their story.
He peers almost as if he's peering into your mind. And he says, you have brought something from the ruins of the unfinished dolmen. A tome. You
Yes.
you do still have it in your pack, and somehow your pack is there by your side.
Oh, poof! It just appeared. Okay.
Yeah. Who can understand the powers of a Daedric prince?
No one. I don't need to.
He says, the page left blank by Lilith can be restored in exchange for that tome. The choice is yours, Amrit. A simple spell in exchange for forgotten lore, or searching for a story you do not yet have.
I take the tome out of my pack. I look it over like a good 10 seconds and then hand it over.
An inky black tendril wraps around the book, and you watch as it seems as if the book is glowing with some sort of untapped power, and then it seems to almost shred itself into ash. And in the book, which is kind of resting open in your hands, letters begin to appear, and they seem to move on their own, written in like these weird swirling spirals and patterns that are just pretty much animated on the page. And in the center of the page, in Daedric runes, you're not entirely sure how you're able to understand, but you see Lilith's name written there. The first page of the Black Tome's complete. And before you, another billowing of pages kind of appears from this breeze, and in front of you, 3 pieces of paper are floating in the air, and you can't read what's on them, but Hermaeus Mora says, "This is a payment in good faith, so that you may know that the Daedric prince of forbidden lore always keeps his debts." He says, "One of these pages is yours. You need only choose which one you want."
Oh, man. You said there were 3 pages?
Yep.
Ay, ay, ay. I go to the page on the far left.
Okay. You take it, and for a brief moment, the writing on it glows a very bright green. So bright, in fact, that it sears into your vision, and it's almost painful. And then you wake up with a start. You're back in Rothgar. In one hand, you're holding the black book and a quill. And in your other hand, you're holding a small, almost like a small soul gem. And when you look at it, when you begin sensing the magicka that's part of it, it begins to crumble into dust. And your mind is filled with knowledge that you didn't think you'd ever be able to possess. So that said, like Zira is still quietly off to the side of the camp, kind of minding her own business, and you turn as if you're kind of rustling around in your sleep, and you open the black book. The writing about Lilith is still there, and then as you think back on the events that for you just happened seconds ago, you realize that an entire history has been seared into your brain. And it is the history of the Mages Guild and the Sigic Order. A portion of the history that you were denied access to because of your interest in necromancy. And a portion of history that enlightens you as to kind of like an on-running feud between the Cult of the Black Worm and the Mages Guild. So, and that's something we can get into later on. But how does Amrit feel about this?
Probably a bit dumbstruck
Mm.
of holy shit that just happened. um, and probably the likelihood of him going back to sleep is probably like 0 to 1%. He's probably just gonna grab one of his bajillion empty books and like start writing stuff down
Mm-hmm.
because that's what he'd do. Uh, does it seem like any time has passed since I came off of watch?
It doesn't seem like it. What has been hours in your mind must have been mere seconds here on Tamriel.
Okay. Hmm. I may just want to start copying the history that I've been given,
Mm-hmm.
but once that's down, I think I want to start writing my story in the next page of the Black Book.
Okay. So you write down the history and then you draw some of your own blood and begin to write in the Black Book?
Yeah.
Okay. So mechanically what this is going to do is I believe you already have proficiency in history, right?
Yes.
So mechanically what this is going to do is anytime you have to make a roll pertaining to the history of the Mages Guild or the Sigic Order or the Cult of the Black Worm, you can add a +2 to that roll in order to recall this history that you've gained in said check.
Okay. +2.
And in features and traits, we can call it a Daedric trait and forbidden lore.
Okay.
Yeah. Um, and so you get started on writing down your history, and being an Altmer, there's a lot to write down, so it's probably going to take you a little while.
Uh-huh.
So you do so, and after a while, you finally begin to get a little weary again, and you settle down to sleep. And you do finally get to sleep. But it's not the restful sleep you were hoping for. Because as you go through these waves of these waves of unconsciousness, um, you find yourself standing on the sands of the Alakir Desert. And in front of you is a massive battlefield, um, strewn with dead soldiers, wood elves, high elves, Khajiit, Bretons, orcs, and redguards, all dead on this field. You're younger, and your job is to find soldiers who are part of the Dominion and to heal them and bring them back to camp. And in front of you, on the ground, grasping at his abdomen, trying to push intestines back in that have spilled out of a cut, is a Red Guard man who appears to be no older than 17. And he looks up at you with panicked eyes that are starting to glaze over with blood loss. And he just gasps, Help me!"
I kind of just sigh and curse under my breath because I know what this is. I remember this. And just get right down in the dirt, kneel down next to him, help him, um, cast a healing spell, um, and just kind of whisper to him that today's not his day.
Thank you so much. Back in the camps, they told horror stories about your kind. They said you were all monsters and didn't care about anyone who wasn't an Altmer like you. I'll tell them that isn't true. And he kind of slowly gets up, leaning on his great sword for balance. And he looks to you, says, "Is there a name I can tell them?"
No name, but tell me yours.
And he kind of smiles between ragged breaths. I mean, he's still in a lot of pain. But
Do I have
he's
anything that'll help with pain?
you kind of know that despite healing, like a lot of that pain takes a while to subside. I mean, the body doesn't just naturally heal like that. And so as a result, like the pain will linger for a while, almost like a growing pain, how your body's growing, but your muscles aren't quite used to it, so they end up getting really sore for a while.
Okay.
It's kind of like that, almost like similarly, it's tender, almost like a bone that's still healing after being broken. And he smiles at you. He says, "Evan, I
Pat?
Evan, Even." He kind of chuckles. He's like, "I was raised in Daggerfall with a Breton mother." And he slowly starts to take a few more steps, and he turns back one more time. He says, "I would have died out here. You've brought honor to the Dominion." And he starts heading back toward his camp. And the dream begins to fade again. And when you wake up once more, the sun is beginning to rise. The mountains are painted in beautiful shades of red and pink as the sun rises over the horizon. And you're kind of left almost with like this hole in your heart, as if you had almost pushed this memory out of your mind at some point, and you weren't expecting it to come back at any point. Um, and you're not even sure as to why it would have shown up now of all times. So,
Was
yeah.
I anywhere near that point when I was writing my own history?
Um, no. You had the closest you had gotten was when you were starting to learn about healing magic, when you were just starting to learn about restoration. By the time you had been enlisted in the Dominion, you had already had maybe a decade's worth of experience.
Okay.
So, yeah. Any thoughts or questions before we wrap up?
The the red guard soldier that we ran into at the tower that was being attacked by the goblins or whatever they were attacked by.
Mm-hmm.
When he talked to Zira, did he happen to say Zira's parents' names or a last
Oh,
name? Because I just know Zira's first name.
you mean the Nord?
Wasn't it Nord? Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, that dude.
He did mention them. I don't remember if you were close enough to be able to hear, though.
I don't remember either. Okay.
However, as you kind of look at Zira and you think about that memory, you can see a resemblance, something a bit beyond merely racial resemblance, almost more of a familial resemblance than you might have initially noticed otherwise.
To Evan that I saved?
To Evan, yeah.
Okay.
So, yeah. So, for those of you watching, this is just the first in more side quests that I'm hoping to be able to run later on. And yeah, it's a little something different. I don't usually see it a whole lot with other tabletop games on YouTube. However, like probably the only other major D&D series that I've seen that kind of does something similar is the Adventure Zone. Wonderful podcast if you're interested in Dungeons and Dragons or and want to listen in on more games. That's definitely one I would recommend. But yeah, so if you enjoyed this, feel free to leave a like, a comment, and a subscribe down below.